On August 12, 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123 embarked on what was supposed to be a routine domestic flight from Tokyo's Haneda Airport to Osaka International Airport. The Boeing 747 aircraft took off at 6:12 p.m., carrying 509 passengers and 15 crew members. The flight was nearly full as many travelers were heading home for a traditional holiday. The aircraft had been in service since 1974 and had accumulated approximately 25,000 flight hours and 18,800 cycles. Unknown to the crew and passengers, this particular plane had a hidden weakness stemming from a repair made 7 years earlier, which would soon lead to a catastrophic chain of events. At 6:24 p.m., just 12 minutes into the flight, as the aircraft was climbing through an altitude of nearly 24,000 feet at a speed of 300 knots, disaster struck. The crew and passengers heard a loud bang, followed by a severe vibration that shook the entire plane. The source of the bang was a catastrophic failure of the aft pressure bulkhead, a component that maintains the pressure difference between the passenger cabin and the unpressurized rear section of the aircraft. This failure led to an explosive decompression, causing a rapid and violent equalization of pressure between the cabin and the outside air. The consequences of this decompression were immediate. The sudden rush of air from the pressurized cabin into the unpressurized tail section created an immense force, powerful enough to blow off the aircraft's vertical stabilizer and rudder. This loss caused directional instability in flight. Additionally, the force of the decompression severed all 4 of the aircraft's hydraulic systems, which are crucial for controlling the plane's flight surfaces. Inside the cabin, the rapid decompression caused chaos. Oxygen masks deployed automatically, and passengers struggled to breathe in the thin air at high altitudes. The flight crew, led by Captain Masami Takahama, quickly realized the gravity of the situation. Just 46 seconds after the decompression, the captain signaled an emergency on the aircraft's transponder and requested an immediate return to Haneda Airport. However, the extent of the damage was far worse than the crew initially realized. With the loss of the vertical stabilizer and all hydraulic systems, the pilots found themselves in an almost impossible situation. The aircraft, now severely crippled, began to experience violent oscillations. Despite these extreme challenges, the flight crew managed to keep the aircraft airborne. Using only engine thrust to control the plane's direction and altitude, they attempted to navigate back towards Haneda Airport. As the aircraft struggled to maintain altitude and direction, it began to veer off course, heading northwest of Tokyo instead of returning to the airport. The flight crew's efforts to control the plane were hampered by the oscillations, which at times caused the aircraft to roll as much as 60 degrees to either side. These extreme movements made it nearly impossible for the pilots to maintain a steady course or altitude. Throughout this ordeal, the flight crew remained in contact with air traffic control, desperately seeking guidance and attempting to find a suitable location for an emergency landing. However, the loss of hydraulics meant that even if they could reach an airport, landing the aircraft safely would be extremely challenging, if not impossible. As the minutes ticked by, the situation aboard Flight 123 grew increasingly dire. Approximately 32 minutes after the initial decompression, at around 6:56 p.m., the crew made a last-ditch effort to stabilize the aircraft. They attempted to extend the flaps, hoping this would provide some additional control. However, this action had the opposite effect, increasing the roll amplitude to about 60 degrees. The pilots quickly retracted the flaps and increased engine thrust, but by this point, the aircraft had entered an unrecoverable descent. In the final moments, the flight was descending at a rate of approximately 18,000 feet per minute. The crew managed to temporarily pull the nose up at around 5,000 feet altitude, but they were unable to maintain this recovery. At 6:56 p.m., Japan Airlines Flight 123 impacted the ridges of Mount Otsutaka in Gunma Prefecture, about 100 kilometers northwest of Tokyo. The impact caused the aircraft to break apart. The main body of the plane continued over the ridge before impacting the opposite slope and bursting into flames. The force of the crash scattered debris over a wide area of the mountainside. Of the 524 people on board, 520 perished in the crash or its immediate aftermath. Miraculously, 4 female passengers, all seated in the rear of the aircraft, survived the initial impact. The crash site's remote and mountainous location complicated rescue efforts. The first search and rescue units didn't reach the site until several hours after the crash, and it wasn't until the following morning that a full-scale rescue operation could be mounted. This delay in rescue efforts has been a subject of controversy, with some experts suggesting that more lives could have been saved if help had arrived sooner. Medical staff who examined the site later found evidence suggesting that some passengers had survived the initial impact but died from shock, exposure to the cold mountain air, or injuries that could have been treated if help had arrived sooner. And among the wreckage, the following photograph was found, taken just moments before the flight's final. The accident was investigated by Japan's Aircraft Accident Investigation Commission with assistance from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board. Their investigation concluded that the accident was caused by the deterioration of flying qualities and loss of primary flight control functions due to the rupture of the aft pressure bulkhead. The crash led to significant changes in aircraft maintenance and repair procedures, as well as improvements in aircraft design. Boeing implemented several design modifications for newly manufactured 747 aircraft and retrofits for existing ones. Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès was born on January 9, 1961 in Versailles, France, into a well-off family with aristocratic roots dating back to the pre-revolutionary era. His father, Bernard, was an engineer who graduated from a prestigious school. His mother, Genevieve, was deeply religious and would play a significant role in shaping Xavier's early years. Growing up, Xavier was exposed to the trappings of aristocratic life from an early age. The family, originally from the Vivarais region in southeastern France, had a lineage that included military officers, a vicar general, a bishop of Rodez, mayors, and knights of St. Louis and of the Legion of Honor. This heritage undoubtedly influenced Xavier's sense of identity and place in French society. His childhood was marked by a strict Catholic upbringing, largely influenced by his mother's devout faith. He attended regular mass and catechism classes, often rising at 6 in the morning to attend services before school. However, unlike his mother, Xavier did not fully embrace the religious fervor expected of him. In later years, he would express on Catholic forums his early disenchantment with the church, describing how the rote memorization of masses in Latin and French failed to inspire genuine faith in him. A significant turning point in Xavier's early life came when he was around 10 years old. His father, described as somewhat of a playboy and not particularly religious, left the family home and moved to Africa. This departure left a void in the boy's life, with only occasional letters maintaining a tenuous connection between father and son. Despite the challenges in his home life, Xavier managed to complete his education. At the age of 20, he earned a baccalaureate in science, industrial technology, and sustainable development. This academic achievement suggested a promising future, but Xavier's professional life would prove to be less straightforward. In his early adulthood, Xavier began to explore his own path, diverging from the strict religious upbringing of his childhood. While he maintained a facade of religious observance, attending mass regularly, his internal struggles with faith became more pronounced. Interestingly, while rejecting much of his Catholic upbringing, Xavier developed a fascination with some of the more macabre elements of Catholic theology. In forum posts later in life, he expressed a particular interest in the concept of sacrificial rites, describing them as a bedrock concept in the Catholic faith. This morbid fascination would later be seen in a chilling new light following the tragic events involving his family. His professional life began to take shape in his 20s and 30s, though it was characterized more by ambition than success. He embarked on a career as a salesman, which he would stick to for most of his life. Xavier's professional activities were often described as vague, with his exact role and achievements remaining somewhat unclear to those around him. In the early 1980s, Xavier met Agnes Hodinger, who would become his wife. Their relationship marked a new chapter in Xavier's life, one that seemed to promise stability and normalcy. They married in 1991, with Xavier taking on the role of father to Agnes's son Arthur, who was born in 1990 to another man. This act of accepting Arthur as his own was seen as unusual in Xavier's conservative circles, perhaps indicating a desire to conform to societal expectations or a genuine commitment to his new family. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Xavier attempted to establish himself in the business world. He created several companies, most of which catered to traveling salespeople and restaurant guests. One such venture was Cell Ref, which had a secretive and ambiguously defined purpose. However, these business endeavors were met with limited success and financial troubles began to mount. As Xavier entered his 40s, the facade of success he had built began to crumble. His businesses were failing and he was accumulating significant debt. The pressure of maintaining his family's lifestyle while facing mounting financial difficulties likely took a severe toll on his mental state. It was during this period that cracks in the family's seemingly perfect image began to appear. In 2004, his wife wrote anonymously on a French online medical forum about the difficulties she and Xavier were experiencing in their marriage. She described feeling afraid and anxious about her old-fashioned husband, stating, "The father is the head, he gives an order, we execute it without seeing to question or understand." This glimpse into their private life suggested that beneath the surface, there were significant tensions and unhappiness. As the years progressed, Xavier's financial situation continued to deteriorate. The death of his father in early 2011 brought matters to a head. Upon handling his father's estate, Xavier realized that there was no family money left to inherit, dashing any hopes of financial rescue. It was at this point that his behavior began to take a sinister turn. In the months leading up to April 2011, Xavier engaged in a series of actions that, in hindsight, appeared to be meticulous preparations for the horrific events that would follow. He inherited a .22 caliber rifle from his late father and began to practice shooting, even purchasing a silencer. He also bought cement, digging tools, and bags of lime from various locations around Nantes. These actions, coupled with the mounting debts and the pressures of maintaining his family's lifestyle, set the stage for the tragic events that would soon unfold. The once promising scion of an aristocratic family, who had struggled with faith, family, and financial success throughout his life, was about to become the central figure in one of France's most notorious and baffling criminal cases. The crime itself centers around the brutal murders of Agnes Dupont de Ligonnès and her 4 children, Arthur, Thomas, Anne, and Benoit, allegedly at the hands of their husband and father, Xavier. In early April 2011, the family suddenly went silent. Neighbors noticed that the usually bustling household had fallen eerily quiet, with shutters drawn and no sign of life. The first indication that something was amiss came on April 11th when a neighbor, Estelle Chapin, noticed a peculiar note affixed to the family's front door. Written in French, it instructed to, quote, "Return all mail to sender." This unusual message, coupled with the uncharacteristic silence from the house, prompted the individual to alert authorities. When police first visited the residence on April 13th, they found nothing immediately suspicious. The house was locked and a cursory check revealed no signs of struggle or foul play. However, the family's unexplained absence and the strange note on the door prompted further investigation. As days passed, more troubling details emerged. The children had not been attending school, and Xavier had sent letters to friends and family with an implausible explanation for their sudden disappearance. He claimed that the entire family was entering the United States Witness Protection Program due to his work as an undercover DEA agent. He also informed his children's schools that the family was relocating to Australia. The grim truth of what had occurred in the home would not be uncovered until April 21st. On that day, investigators made a horrifying discovery. Buried beneath the terrace in the family's backyard were the bodies of Agnes, the 4 children, and the family's 2 Labrador dogs. The victims had been wrapped in sheets and covered with quicklime, presumably to hasten decomposition. Each body was found with religious icons, a detail that would later fuel speculation about possible motives. Autopsies revealed that each victim had been drugged with sleeping pills and then shot twice in the head with a .22 caliber rifle. The precision and planning involved in the murders shocked even seasoned investigators. It is believed that Xavier murdered his wife and 3 of his children on the night of April 3rd or 4th. On April 4th, Anne and Benoit did not attend their school due to illness. Their friends became concerned when they could not reach them online or by text on their cell phones. The fate of Thomas, the eldest biological son of Xavier, adds another layer of tragedy to the crime. Investigators believe that Xavier lured Thomas back home on April 5th under the pretense that his mother had been involved in a cycling accident. That evening, Xavier and Thomas were seen dining together at La Croix Cadeau, an expensive restaurant in Avril. They arrived at about 9 p.m. with Xavier ordering a €35 tasting menu and half a bottle of wine, while Thomas had a sea bass dish and tomato juice. Witnesses at the restaurant recalled that Thomas appeared to feel unwell near the end of the meal and that father and son barely spoke to each other during the evening. It appears that Xavier killed Thomas shortly after their return home, completing the annihilation of his entire family. The financial motive behind the crimes began to emerge as investigators delved into Xavier's background. Despite his aristocratic lineage, he was deeply in debt and had failed in several business ventures. It's believed that this financial pressure, combined with the shame of potential ruin, may have driven Xavier to commit the unthinkable. In the aftermath of the murders, Xavier's actions paint a picture of a man attempting to cover his tracks while also seemingly saying goodbye to familiar places. On April 12th, he stayed at a luxury hotel in southern France, dining alone and booking an expensive suite. The following day, he withdrew cash from an ATM in La Seyne-sur-Mer, a town where he had lived in the 1980s. 2 days later, footage of him was captured checking into a different budget hotel in Roquebrune-sur-Argent. Then on April 15th, the last confirmed sighting of Xavier occurred as he left the hotel, carrying a large bag that investigators believe may have contained the murder weapon. It was during these final moments where the last photos of a man who had just massacred his entire family were captured. Following the discovery of the bodies, French authorities launched an extensive manhunt for Xavier. An international arrest warrant was issued and his photo was widely circulated. The search initially focused on the area around Roquebrune-sur-Argent, where he was last seen. Hundreds of police officers, firefighters, and search dogs combed the rugged terrain of southern France, exploring caves and abandoned mines where some speculated that the alleged killer might have committed suicide. However, no trace of him was found. The manhunt was one of the most extensive in French history. As the case gained national and international attention, investigators interviewed 25 of Xavier's friends and relatives and conducted searches across various locations in France. However, these efforts also proved fruitless. Over the years, the case has been marked by numerous false leads and unconfirmed sightings, keeping the mystery alive. In July 2015, a letter signed by someone claiming to be Xavier was sent to a journalist stating, "I am still alive." The authenticity of this letter was never confirmed. In 2018, police raided a monastery in the area where the suspect was last seen after a witness reported seeing a monk resembling Xavier. This lead proved to be false. Then in October 2019, a man was arrested at Glasgow Airport on suspicion of being Xavier. However, DNA tests quickly proved it was a case of mistaken identity. As of January 2025, the case remains open, with Xavier Dupont de Ligond still one of France's most wanted fugitives. While active leads have become scarce, the investigation continues, and authorities still receive occasional tips and reported sightings. One of the prevailing theories is that Xavier committed suicide after murdering his family. This theory is supported by several factors, including his financial troubles and the lack of a body. Proponents of this theory suggest that Xavier may have killed himself in a remote location where his body has not yet been found. The rugged terrain and dense forests of southern France are often cited as possible locations for his remains. Additionally, in July 2010, he sent an email to two friends discussing suicide. He wrote, "If things go wrong, I have only two solutions. I can blow myself up with my car, or I can set fire to the house when everyone's asleep." He also mentioned, quote, "So at the end of August or the beginning of September, I'll have my back against the wall with a final decision to make. Alone or collective suicide." These two statements for many seal the deal on this theory. However, this theory has its critics. Some argue that the meticulous planning and subsequent disappearance suggest a desire to escape rather than end his life. Another popular theory is that Xavier carefully planned his escape and is now living under a new identity, possibly in another country. This is supported by the previously mentioned effort he put in toward the planning phase. Furthermore, before disappearing, Xavier closed the family's bank accounts and settled final payments with his children's schools, indicating preparation for a long-term absence. Some speculate that his aristocratic background and potential international connections could have facilitated his escape and establishment of a new life abroad. One of the more controversial theories stems from Xavier's own claims in the letters he sent to family and friends before disappearing. This theory suggests that he and his family were indeed placed in a witness protection program due to his alleged work as an informant for the US Drug Enforcement Administration. However, this theory has been widely dismissed by law enforcement and most experts. The DEA has officially stated that they have no record of Xavier working for them.